Brew Strong is brought to you by Blickman Engineering, home of the Riptide. Visit them online at blickmanengineering.com.
Brew Strong is brought to you by Blickman Engineering, home of the top-tier brewing stand. Visit them online at blickmanengineering.com.
Brewers, it's time for the beer radio you've been looking for. This is the show that dispels myths, tackles the toughest topics, and makes no apologies for geeking out on beer. Hosted by two guys that drink before they think, Jamil Zainasheff and John Palmer. This is Brew Strong.
Hey, my brothers and sisters.
Greetings. Good to be back.
It's the Cretin himself.
Indeed. Yeah, how you been faring?
This Cretin has been doing okay. Kind of hanging in there.
Yeah.
All my physical and mental problems, you know.
And some brewery expansions too, no doubt. I think it seems like you've been real busy at the brewery lately.
Yeah, I've got a lot to do at the brewery. So what I've discovered is I thought things were, going well and that I could be gone more. And it's just, I need to be here, day in and day out pretty much because there's a lot of little questions that happen. And then, leaving those answers to other people, things start to eventually change from what my ideal is,
Yeah.
Not that it's wrong, but it's different.
Yeah.
And I want to, have things go a certain way. And, so the more I'm here, the better I think things run, which is pleasing in a way, but also, makes it harder for me to do trips and stuff.
Right. Yeah. Yep, I can see how there'd be a certain amount of mission creep when people assume you'd, say one thing and no, it's not quite it. Yeah.
Right, and it's just people's opinion of one thing or another, or it's like, well, yeah, that that's in spec or not, or what is the spec for something, especially new beers. So yeah, being here is pretty critical, especially right now. There's just a lot to do. We've been adding, more tanks and more styles and doing some different things and experimenting with some new equipment and new methods, always in the interest of improving, the beers that we make, or always trying new things. And so, yeah. You can, especially in those, I think it's important that, I be part of that process to make sure that, it's getting the results that I want. And, a lot of it is just a mental exercise almost of what is the right thing to do and how to do it. And, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's maybe a whole nother show. We were speaking before the thing about we're going to Sweden. We're both going to Sweden.
Yeah.
Two of us.
Looking forward to that.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting. It's one of my favorite places in the world and one of my favorite conferences. So I think you'll have fun.
Okay, good. I'm looking forward to it. It's March is going to be busy. We've got that trip to Sweden. I come back home for a day or two, and then it's off to Ensenada for the Ensenada Beer Fest in Mexico. And then after that, we've got the Brew Your Own Boot Camp in Denver this year. And that's always a lot of fun. So, busy month.
Yeah. See, the only thing that would make Sweden more fun is if Blickman was to come with us.
That's right. Speaking of always experimenting with new things, yes.
Right. the experimental guy. See, that was the perfect fusion of Adam and Eve and Blickman.
There you go. Yeah.
Experimenting. He's always willing to try new stuff.
Mm-hmm. He is.
Searching for power tools and stuff. Our good friend John Blickman. He has sponsored the show since its inception. I think there was a couple of shows early on where he wasn't on yet, but he's been paying for the show for a very long time, so you don't have to pay for it. Because of that, I would appreciate it greatly if you would go to BlickmanEngineering.com, check out the things there, look at the Blickman stuff in the store, your local homebrew shop, and send a thank you email to feedback at Blickman Engineering, telling John how much you appreciate that he pays for the show, so you don't have to. Great guy, great engineer, really understands how brewers brew and designs products that make it innovate your brew day, as Jason Petrus used to say.
Yep. He's always trying to improve things, make it more efficient, make an easier, more fun brew day.
Right, and providing you some entertainment and information through the show. So
that's right.
John Blickman, he's the entire package. He is for a fact, and a good guy, really good guy. So today we're gonna kind of revisit some water adjustments, and people always have a lot of questions about water adjustments, and it seems part of it is there's so many ways to. Should we say skin a cat? That's
right.
Appropriate thing to say these days, or what do you use instead of skin a cat?
Vegetable peelers,
not
spoons. I see. Instead of
what's the saying you use? Many ways to slice an apple, core an apple. I don't know.
All roads lead to Rome.
All roads lead to Rome.
There's more than one way to cook an egg.
There's one way to cook an egg. There's more than one way to pleasure yourself. Yes. There we go. I think we'll stick with that one. One's the word. Instead of skinning cats. That just sounds wrong.
Bevo's here, and she's like, I knew he was going to go there somehow.
Of course. She knows me. So, and because of that, there are some nuances that people, it's like when you're trying to add chloride, do you use calcium chloride, use sodium chloride? I mean, there's a couple of ways of getting chloride into your water, so which one do you use and why? And at which point do you say, well, I have too much calcium or too much sodium, or, it's one of those questions of, and it's almost like cooking in a way. Seasoning, you and I have always said, water adjustments and minerals are kind of like seasoning to your beer. Right. You add a little bit of salt, you change the flavor, you add a little bit of pepper, whatever. You're changing your basic chicken into, something much more flavorful and rich, or, spicy, or whatever you want. But there's many ways to do it. So I guess that's why we're gonna revisit this, because people still have questions.
And maybe you don't have time to go back through the archives and go to the Waterganza shows and so on. So we like to keep it current. And
Watergasm was what the shows were called. Not Ganza, Gasm, Watergasm.
That's probably it. I may be misremembering.
Yes,
we could check with Bevo. She'd know.
Oh, she knows it's a
She's
gasm.
Too busy shaking her head to know.
Okay, well, faith in Bevo shaken for the moment, but we'll persevere.
All right. Yes. Okay. So why are we doing this?
Okay, well, we're doing it for three reasons. One, we are trying to adjust our mash pH, and the reason we adjust the mash pH is we're trying to get the best efficiency from our mash and get the most yield from our ingredients, most bang for our buck. So the mash pH is our first goal when it comes to water adjustment. And then we're trying to adjust the flavor balance, as you noted, sulfate to chloride ratio. What beers do you want more sulfate for? What beers do you want more chloride for? Where is it less critical? Where you want a balanced profile. And then there's the third concept, which is structure. Now, this one may seem kind of mythical, but if you think about different beer styles such as Bohemian Pilsner, German Pilsner, Dortmunder Export, 3 Pilsner malt beers, similar gravities, noble hops, lager yeast, but they are different in the way that those flavors are expressed. And one of those factors is the water with which they're brewed. Bohemian Pilsner, very soft, even though it's fairly bitter, it's a big soft bitterness and big soft malty profile. Mm-hmm. German Pilsner, a little more crisp, little drier, and again, it's because going from the Bohemian to the German Pilsner, you increase the minerals in the water and give more structure to the beer's flavors.
And a different set of minerals, a different balance.
Different balance and also different amounts.
But different types, yes?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a little bit different type, but just magnitude, the amount of seasoning in the beer, if you will. The difference between French cooking and Cajun cooking. The more minerals that are in the water, the more structure there are for the beer flavors, and the more robust that beer tastes. Dortmunder Export, the third type, again, a much more robust tasting beer, and it's due in part to the higher minerality of the Dortmunder water. Mm-hmm. So those are why we adjust our brewing water. We're doing it to adjust, our mash pH. We're doing it to adjust our beer flavors. And when we adjust mash pH, we're also influencing our eventual beer pH. Mm-hmm. And the beer pH will affect how those flavors are expressed to your palate. So a little lower beer pH tends to focus flavors. A little higher beer pH tends to open up flavors a bit. And that's a subtle effect, but indeed very noticeable when you're trying different beers, the same recipe, different water.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. All right. So before we get into the what, I think it's time for us to take a short break.
Right.
And we will come back with what kind of...
what we're going to adjust. Yes.
And what you're going to adjust. All right. We'll be back right after this.
Hey, it's Kaylee Cuoco for Priceline. Ready to go to your happy place for a happy price? Well, why didn't you say so? Just download the Priceline app right now and save up to 60% on hotels. So whether it's Cousin Kevin's Kazoo Concert in Kansas City, go Kevin, or Becky's Bachelorette Bash in Bermuda, you never have to miss a trip ever again. So download the Priceline app today. Your savings are waiting.
Go to your happy place for a happy price. Go to your happy price, Priceline.
Are you looking for a simple brewing system that's great for all grain brewing, but everything on the market seems to be full of compromises? Blickman Engineering has the answer. The Blickman Brew Easy All Grain Brewing System. The Brew Easy is a complete system with easy upgrades and a beautiful compact design, perfect for any size brewing location. At its core, the Brew Easy is built on 2 gorgeous Blickman Boilermaker brew kettles, a high-temperature March pump, and either a top-tier gas burner or the new Boil Coil electric heater. The Brew Easy adapter lid allows the pots to stack on top of each other, forming an efficient, strong, and compact brewing setup that comes in 5, 10, and 20-gallon batch sizes. Upgrade your Brew Easy system with full automated control by adding a Blickman Tower of Power temp controller, and make moving around easy with the Blickman Kettle Cart. The Brew Easy is modular. If you already own a Boilermaker kettle, you can build your Brew Easy by purchasing just the modules you need. The new Brew Easy all-grain brewing system. See it today at BlickmanEngineering.com and brew with Blickman quality on your new Brew Easy.
Back to the beer guys that make other beer guys look like wine guys. Brew strong.
All right, we're back. We're talking water adjustments. People have a lot of questions about this, John. I think a lot of people understand the why, but not quite the what or the how.
Yeah, that's probably a good thought. When we talk about adjusting water, we're really talking about adjusting the mineral content, and what you do to adjust it depends on what you have. We had a recent question to Brew Strong, where the brewer asked, hey, here's my water report. Here's what Beersmith is telling me to do to hit this pH of 5.2. But in his case, he said the amount of acid that it's calculated seems to be an awful lot. And whenever you adjust water, you have to be very cognizant of how much water you're adjusting, because that directly influences how much of any salt or acid that you're doing. Right. And you have to, sorry.
Oh, no, if you're adjusting just your mash water, right? Or you're adjusting your mash and your sparge water. If you're adjusting just water for an extract brew or, extract with steeping grains, it's all going to be, somewhat different, just basically even just from volume. Yeah.
And, so you have to be very aware of that volume. I like to adjust my water in the hot liquor tank. That way I can just, adjust it all ahead of time, all, 10, 15 gallons of it or whatever I'm doing, and then just brew with that water, sparge with that water there on out, and I don't have to worry about making additional adjustments.
Well, see, that's one of the joys of being a home brewer is your hot liquor tank. You're using it for that day or for that batch, and you can do that. In a commercial brewery, my hot liquor tank is 90 barrels, and we may be doing 2 or 3 different beers or just one beer, but that hot liquor tank is continually being drained and filled.
Yeah,
and it's to have 90 barrels of hot liquor on hand at all times, and then it gets made up from water that comes from the heat exchanger. So we can't adjust the sparge, the hot liquor tank.
To one go. Yeah, that's a good point. That's a very good point. So you need to instead have that hot liquor tank area, that water, as at your baseline or just your source water, and then do your adjustments at the mash tun and at the kettle. I see. That's a very good consideration as well. Right. So important to be aware of how you're doing the adjustments, when you're doing the adjustments. What are we adjusting? Well, we're trying to adjust the mineral concentrations. Sometimes we're trying to add calcium to get to a baseline 50 ppm. Other times we're trying to reduce our alkalinity or offset our alkalinity with calcium additions. To reduce alkalinity, very often you need acid additions, whether phosphoric or lactic, are very common. Which do you use, Jamil?
Phosphoric, 75% phosphoric.
Yeah, that's probably the most common in commercial breweries because it's readily available and flavorless. I often use lactic just because it's easy to get from the homebrew shop. And then, of course, we have reverse osmosis systems, which are, increasingly available from Home Depot and Lowe's and so on.
Right.
And, that's a great way to strip the alkalinity out of your water and get down to, near pure water and allow you to add the particular salts you need for a particular brew. Reverse osmosis systems are very common in California among California breweries because, as you know, your water source can change during the month unexpectedly.
Yeah, my problem with this is just so wasteful of water.
That's true. Yeah.
Most of those you're going to lose half of the water, and then some of them you can lose less. Maybe down to 20-25% loss.
Yeah.
Under the real high pressure, high end ones. But and people use that water for other things, I guess. They use it for rinsing stuff, but it's so high in minerals that you can't use it like to rinse the outside of your tanks because it leaves such a mess.
Yeah, it's brine at that point. It's like
exactly
seawater. It's
that's what they call it, is brine.
Yeah.
Well, and so for us, for example, our water, that we measure with the Lamont kit,
the Brew Lab.
The Brew Lab. Over the past 3 years, here's our averages. Calcium hardness is 67. The magnesium hardness is 60, sodium 38, sulfate 50, chloride 29, total hardness 127, total alkalinity 117, and residual alkalinity 80, and the average pH is 7.8.
Okay, yep.
Those are average numbers across 3 years of measurements. So what we use this, and actually this is coming out of our hot liquor tank.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Because what we find is a residence time in the hot liquor tank, we're getting some minerals dropping out and actually forming a hard deposit on the inside of the hot liquor tank. So every year or so, we have to drain it. And then they come in with whatever that acid is they used in Breaking Bad to dissolve a body.
Yeah.
They use that. They literally that's what they use. They put on hazmat suits, and it takes special licensing to do this, and they clean out the mineral deposits out of the hot liquor tank for us.
Yeah, that takes some strong acid at that point.
Hydrofluoric acid.
Yes, something like that. You have to be licensed and trained to use it, so we can't do it ourselves.
Hopefully nobody asks any questions about why the search history on the studio computer is acid used to dissolve body.
I'll bet you it just popped right up.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I put in acid and the rest auto-populated.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's brain network. I mean, these people that disappeared. You think Daniela went back to Germany? Right.
I was told she went to call screener heaven.
Yeah, exactly. She's working at a farm up north. She's okay. She's running around, having fun. Anyway, so we use our water just as is. We carbon filter it. Like I said, it goes into a cold liquor tank first, used to chill the wort, and then that sends it to the hot liquor tank, and then we heat it up the rest of the way. And so that's our water.
Yep.
So I'm always working from that, and then I make adjustments from there. I mean, I think our water is pretty decent at those numbers.
Yeah. It's you have 2 equivalents of calcium, 1 equivalent or 3 equivalents of magnesium, relatively low concentrations of sodium chloride and sulfate, so you can add. It gives you room to add calcium salts. You do have 120-ish total alkalinity and residual alkalinity of 80, which is on the positive side. which indicates that you need to offset the alkalinity of the water with some specialty malts. Adding some acidic specialty malts or adding physical phosphoric acid to the mash to help you achieve your target mash pH range.
So generally, what I do is I look at the beer we're trying to brew. And if it's a dark beer, there's the acids, the acidity of the dark grains, and that'll help bring down the acidity. And then am I trying, or is it all pale malt or something in between? And then am I trying to make something that's soft and it's got a nice mouthfeel to it, and maybe I want more chloride or sodium, or am I making something that I want the hop bitterness to pop?
Yeah,
I want more sulfates. So those are kind of the decisions I make, and then usually what I want is a ratio between the chloride and the sulfate. And if I'm going hoppy, then maybe 3-to-1 towards the sulfate. If I'm going softer, more luscious mouthfeel, then I'll go 3-to-1 on the chloride side, or
right.
2-to-1, or maybe even. And then I try and keep the total amounts. I try and keep my calcium 150 or less.
Yep.
So I work with the things that God gave us, which is gypsum, Epsom salt, regular old salt, calcium chloride, magnesium chloride. All those things will bring the pH down. Or I use like chalk, baking soda, or you can use even caustic to bring your pH up. So I kind of mess around with those, and then I see how much phosphoric acid I need to add in order to get me down to my pH that I want, generally around the 5.2, 5.4 range. And so that's how I approach it. And even with the water we have, I'm able to achieve most of the water profiles that I want. I haven't really suffered in that respect.
Yeah, I think that's an important point as well. You're not trying to achieve a perfect water. Brewing is cooking. You are the brewer. You are making your beer, and you are adjusting the water thereby the beer to bring out the flavors you want in that beer. And so there's no hard and fast rule as to exactly how that beer should taste. You are the brewmaster and adjusting it to as you see fit. Whether it's bringing out the hop character with some more sulfate, bringing out the malt character and the smoothness with some more chloride. Those are your tools to work with.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think one concept, in water adjustment that's very useful to have in mind is this concept of balancing a triangle. If you consider the residual alkalinity of your water as one point on that triangle, the amount of base malt that you have in your recipe is another point, and then the amount of specialty malt that you have in your recipe is the third point. If you picture that as a triangle of different length sides because of these quantities, the balance point of that triangle is going to be your mash pH. Mm-hmm. And so if you have lots of specialty malts, like in a stout or an imperial red, the acidity of that grain bill relative to your water and your base malt is going to move that balance point further out towards that acidic specialty malt. And you may need to increase your water alkalinity to compensate and bring that balance point back to, your pH target. Mm-hmm. Little couple words on pH target. So often brewers are told, or they learn that we're trying to hit a pH of 5.2. Not always true. You are trying to get a lower pH than you would normally achieve with base malt alone. That's typically around 5.8 or so. Mm-hmm. We are trying to bring that pH down because that helps protect the beer from astringency, and it does also other things in terms of improving lauderability, refining the hop flavor, and a few other things. But there's a range of mash pH that works for good conversion and also affects the flavor of the beer. So generally we're looking like 5.2 to 5.6. Mm-hmm. I like 5.2 for pale beers. Your Pilsner malt beers helps the little lower pH helps makes that base malt character pop a little bit more, makes it a little brighter. As you go to darker grain bills, amber ales, brown ales, and on up into porters and stouts, then a little higher mash pH, I think, is better for flavor. It helps open up the specialty malt character and allowing you to taste the different malts that are present in that beer.
That, and I think it just balances out better.
Yeah.
I was just looking at our milk stout that we're doing, and I'd like to hit a pH of about 5.6 in the mash, and because I think just overall it adds to the roundness of the malt character. Just the especially in something like a milk stout, I want a more of a fullness and
exactly
to that beer.
That sounds perfect. Mm-hmm. We received one of your questions into Brew Strong last week, a gentleman named Scott, and he was going to brew a Russian Imperial Stout. And, the brewing software he was using was telling him, okay, target 5.2. He already had lots of dark malts, and it was telling him to add quite a bit of lactic acid to get drive down to that 5.2. And I explained in a reply that, we're not truly trying to hit 5.2 here. I think, 5.4 to 5.6 is a better range for a Russian Imperial Stout. Again, as you say, to make it a little rounder and fuller, sweeter tasting.
Well, and what happens during ferment is, and it depends on the yeast, but, it can take out, can acidify the beer even further.
Yeah.
And, all fermentations will, but, with the acidic nature of the roasted grains, those will come out more and will pop. So your pH will go down. It may go down to exactly where it was going to end up anyways. Even starting at 5.6, if the ending of the pH was going to be 4.2 or 4.4, it's probably going to get down to 4.4, even if you started at 5.2 or 5.6. See what I'm saying? Either way, it's going to get to that same finishing point.
Yeah, that's a great point. There's a lot of factors.
Yeah,
that affect beer pH. But in general, you can kind of visualize going from say 5.6 down to 4.6, 5.4 down to 4.4 kind of transition. But it depends on your mineral content, the mash, the yeast, the strain that you're using. A lot of factors will affect that. Mm-hmm. Couple, point or so each way.
Absolutely. All right. Let's take another break. When we come back, I think a little bit more about how we make the adjustments, and how we measure things and all that. We'll be back right after this.
Back to the two guys that know how to turn beer into beer. This is Brew Strong.
Technical.
That's the testicles of technical. Yes. And this fine episode is brought to you by the American Homebrewers Association, makers of the free Brew Guru mobile app. If you love brewing, beer and saving money on the beer when you go out, you need the Brew Guru in your corner. The app offers a searchable database of homebrew recipes, including popular craft beer clones and hundreds of winning recipes from the National Homebrew Competition. What's more, Brew Guru has a searchable map of deals at breweries, beer bars, and homebrew shops. Grab the free Brew Guru app for iPhone and Android devices and follow the path to good beer. I'll tell you, the Brew Guru app is a good app, and it's free. And when you're a member, you get all the goodies in there, including the discounts, and I'll tell you, that is an excellent map of not just breweries, but the beer bars, homebrew shops, all the stuff that's giving you those discounts. If you use that app, every time you go out to buy homebrew supplies or drink beer or visit breweries, it will pay for your membership.
That's right.
I bet you'll save enough money that it'll pay for your membership. So check it out, the Brew Guru mobile app. You can get it from all the places you get your mobile app needs met. So just hand the phone to your child and have them install it for you. There you go.
Yeah. Hey, speaking of mobile apps,
Yes.
This would probably be a good time to point out that there is the Palmer Water Adjustment app available on both the Apple and Google stores. It's free. And it works much like, exactly like my Excel spreadsheet for adjusting water. Help you, choose a style of beer that you're trying to brew, some suggested guidelines. You input and save your source water data, and then you can do salt additions, acid additions, and it'll calculate the numbers for you, estimate your acid additions for you. It doesn't estimate your mash pH. What it does is it calculates the changes that you've made to your residual alkalinity. And I think that's an important concept in that, all of these water adjustments we're doing in both my app and other people's apps that estimate mash pH, these are models. These are very often simple linear models for which is actually fairly complex chemistry. So that's why my app doesn't go into estimating mash pH. It just works on the residual alkalinity end. So, you're brewing a dark beer, go for a positive value of residual alkalinity, somewhere between, say, 50 and 100. If you're trying to brew a pale beer, then go for negative values of residual alkalinity. And what's important then is to do those adjustments, brew that beer, and measure your mash pH. Get an actual pH meter and measure it, because that is the real deal. Estimates are good, but you don't want to blindly follow an estimate and not measure your pH and find out that, hey, the estimate was off. So measure.
The important thing, it's any of these calculators. I do find that, especially in pale beers, the pH, if you've entered your water profile correctly, and I find that I can go back and I can enter in beers that we've brewed and the amount of acid that we had, and sure enough, the pH matches, especially on the pale beers. Yeah, it matches quite well. It's when you get into a lot of the specialty malts and especially the darker beers that things tend to kind of get a little skewed as to what the pH might be. Yeah. So just take it with a grain of salt, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There's no substitute for actually brewing and measuring. And any commercial brewer you would talk to as a home brewer, they always spend 2 or 3, 5 batches dialing a recipe in. Part of it is for mash pH. How much acid do they need to add to hit their target? Where is their target? Maybe it's a little lower, maybe it's a little higher, depending on what they taste. So, there's no hard and fast rules.
And it's interesting, I'll make a beer and people are like, oh, wow, that's fantastic. That's, great. And the distributors especially are just like, well, it has to stay exactly like this. You can't make any changes at all. It's like, hell no, I'm going to be changing this thing. I used to tell them, it's like, well, I'm going to make a little tweak, and they would freak out. I'm like, I don't bother telling them anything anymore, as far as that goes. I mean, there's some of the distributors I can, they understand, they understand beer and brewing and flavor and all that. Some don't. But the ones that do, they appreciate the fact that I'm constantly tweaking. I'm trying to make the beers better. And the vast majority of people are never going to know. It's a small little change that, unless you're really looking for it and you're tasting beers side by side, you just don't know. So we will tweak the water. We will tweak, the hops. We will tweak, the process, temperatures, pitching rates, everything. Everything is, a little dial that you can tweak to get, your exact output. Or everything is the seasoning, or the temperature of the pan, or however you're cooking something.
Right.
All makes a difference.
Yeah. Do you find that there's, comparing, say, your West Coast IPAs to your hazy IPAs, that you are flip-flopping the sulfate and chloride?
Yeah, for certain. We absolutely do that.
Yeah.
And then, the question is, how heavy to go on some of these. So, and then if we want to go heavier on the chloride, there's only so much calcium chloride we want to throw in before you just get a lot of calcium in there. Or do you do more sodium chloride, but then there's only so much sodium you can put in before it tastes salty.
Yeah.
So, it's kind of a balancing act. And, if you overdo it, the beer starts to taste minerally.
Yeah.
And you taste that more than you taste, what you were intending. And I taste a lot of beers out there that just have this real mineral character to them, and I think people have kind of overdone it. That's why I think you and I have always said, look, use some restraint, use some caution. You don't want to overdo it. Start with less. More is less, or less is more, or whatever. More.
Right.
Is more.
Yeah. And that's very true, especially I think in the hazy IPAs, people are going for, more chloride, trying to make that beer more juicy and more creamy. And, it's, again, this is season. You don't want to oversalt your beer. You don't want to get a minerally finish on, an otherwise soft and juicy beer. Mm-hmm. I've tasted that myself quite frequently. Keep all your minerals, additions, and so on. You keep that total concentration somewhere between 50 and 100 is generally good. In some cases, chloride, you can kick that up to 150 for a hazy, but make sure that not everything is over 100 ppm, because that's when you start running into these minerality issues.
Mm-hmm. Right, like a total, total limit. Yeah, because I've seen suggestions of 250 in the chloride, and I have not gone up that high commercially, but I'll do 150, 180.
Yeah. And I think that's, again, as long as you understand where you're pushing that envelope and keeping things compensated. Otherwise, you can't have every mineral, every ion up at that level. But the chloride for a hazy works. You can have your sodium. I think, you can have a sodium level up around 100, and chloride around 150. It's fine. But make sure that you don't have high sulfate as well, because now you're going to start running into the minerality issue.
All right. Now, what about sodium becoming salty? What's the limit for, this is a common concern for people is, I don't want the beer to taste salty.
Yeah.
Generally, that's what, 200, 250?
Yeah, I would say it's up in that area. People's sensitivity to salt, of course, varies. And I think usually you don't get a salty flavor like you do in a Gosa so much as you get the mineral, the metallic, the dry, chalky kind of finish in a beer. I think that arrives first before saltiness does, except in the case of Gosa where you've got some acidity and sodium chloride kind of as in higher levels. Do you brew Gosas, Jamil?
I have.
Yeah, I don't know what. I don't know off the top of my head what saline or sodium and chloride levels are recommended for Gosas, but I would say it's probably in maybe the 200, 250 ppm level to get some saline type taste.
Right. Well, and people go overboard with it, I think. That's one of the problems I've seen is high salty, overly salty and sour beers.
Yeah. Yeah, it's from the descriptions, it's really supposed to be more of a subtle salt sweetness, aspect where you've enhanced that maltiness character.
Well, the way I look at it is, the beer was sour, and so somebody decided to add some salt to it to kind of mitigate the fact that it was coming up sour, or it was tart.
Yeah.
Not really sour, but tart, and a little bit of salt and kind of sweeten it up, and that was kind of the genesis of this back in the day. It wasn't to have this super briny sour beer.
Right.
Like everything, we overdo it.
Yeah.
I don't know about that. Well, I have one other question for you. All right. So, like I was talking earlier, we have our hot liquor tank. So our salt additions are just going into the mash. And, there's the hot liquor is not adjusted. So all the acid and salt additions are just done in the mash.
Okay.
And how do you calculate that? What do you think of that? Do you add more than you would for just, do you add enough for both the mash and the sparge? I've seen people add some to the mash and actually hold some back so their pH was higher in the mash, and then they add it to the kettle. What are your thoughts on those techniques?
On that? Yeah, that's a good question. My understanding and my priority is that we're trying to dial in the mash pH first. So I only when I have to hold my salts back and add them at the mash tun after doughing in, I'm doing that salt addition based on the volume of water in the mash tun to hit my target mash pH. So that chemistry is set up there. It's dialed in. I do the mash and then I start sparging. Now, the sparge water, doesn't have any added salts to it. If you have a way of dosing that, you could add appropriate salts per gallon, as you sparge. But generally, I think you're going to leave that sparge water alone, and then, for the volume of water that you sparged with, when it gets to the kettle, then I would add the appropriate amount of salts for that sparge volume to the kettle. To kind of maintain that water profile that I was setting up in the mash tun. So I'm just trying to to keep it equal, keep it like I had been brewing with a large tank of this water naturally. that's my philosophy on it. Again, you could add more. You could, say, okay, well, I've got my mash pH taken care of. I've produced my wort. Maybe I'm going to save all my dark malts for the Vorloff. And I'm not worrying about, additional kettle additions or so on, and treat it that way. When it comes to, final wort concentrations, we don't have enough published data to say, how different ion concentrations taste. We kind of treat it from the front end saying, starting with this water, the beer tastes okay. And starting, if we use calcium sulfate salt, that, enhances the hop character. And if we use calcium chloride, that enhances the malt character. I guess I'm going on and on. But, I think do your additions to the mash tun based on that mash water volume, and then make up any sparge water volume additions at the kettle based on that sparge water volume.
Interesting. Okay. Any other thoughts on water before we wrap this up?
The final one is a reminder to always take a sample from your mash and cool it to near room temperature to measure pH. There is a rule of thumb adjustment of like 0.3 lower reading at mash temperature than at room temperature, but that is not a universal constant. It's an estimate. So it works better when we talk about, this 5.2 to 5.6 mash pH range that we're trying to hit. Take a sample, cool it in a shallow saucer, measure that pH near room temperature. If it's at body temperature, that's fine. You're closer to room temp than you are if you're measuring it directly in the mash. And
I'll tell you, one of my favorite things that I made when I started this commercial brewery is a little copper immersion coil. I made it out of, went to Lowe's or Home Depot and got some refrigerator, copper water line for the back of the refrigerator. Yeah. So it's a tiny little line. I wrapped it around something. I can't remember what I wrapped it around, and made an immersion coil. And, I had a 10-foot of this. I think it was $10. And then I got a stainless cup. And so we take a cup of liquid wort, and then this thing drops in. And I took a thermometer, a clip-on thermometer, and it's clipped onto the little coil, and the probe goes down in the center. And then you just turn on the water, stir the cup with it, and it chills the cup of wort in seconds. The whole cup is completely done. You can fill up a hydrometer flask or do your pH reading or whatever, and it works out great. We've used it for the last 9-10 years, and I'm surprised somebody doesn't make these.
Yeah, that's a beautiful concept.
Yeah, quick and easy. Total is maybe $20, including the thermometer, pieces of tubing, the stainless cup. And, well worth it. And it makes it so easy to get your samples down to room temperature. The thermometers are right in there so you can see it. Maybe I should post something, or, I don't know, take a picture of it. And then
I think people are probably curious on what you're able to find that was thin enough and long enough to wrap the coil around.
Right. And then once you're done with your sample, you just pour it right back into your kettle, and, or back into your mash. And it's good to go. It doesn't even hurt anything. Yeah. It's just one of the things that we figured out early on. All right, another great show. thanks again for your questions about water, everybody. That's again, another water show. This water tends to be like the top topic, water and fermentation. So we'll keep covering those as long as you guys have questions. Speaking of which, we should probably do another Q&A show one of these days. We haven't done one in a long time, and I know the questions are building up. All right. Well, another fine show. Thank you, everybody. We will, if you're listening live, stay tuned, as we will be doing a show on...
current trends in American brewing.
Current trends in American brewing. That sounds very topical. All right. Make sure you check out our fine sponsors. Check out Blickman Engineering and send them an email at blickmanengineering.com. Feedback at blickmanengineering.com, and tell John how much you appreciate him paying for the show so you don't have to. Make sure to check out the AHA and the Brew Guru app, which will help you save enough money to really pay for your membership. So until then, everybody, brew strong.
Brew strong, everyone.